Good morning, brothers and sisters. I praise and thank God for another opportunity to minister to you this morning. Just two things before we start. First of all, I would just like to have just a disclaimer. The name Jebo, my nickname, is actually not taken or in any way connected with the Jebusites. It's mentioned in verse 11. Some people think that that's the origin of my nickname. And the second thing is, before we continue, please join me in prayer. Let's pray. Father, we just thank you for this opportunity to come before you this morning to learn about your word, to understand, Lord, your plan, your purpose, and your mission. It is our prayer that as we study your word, may we see ourselves, Lord, aligning with this plan. It is our prayer that you help us to understand the greater purpose of your forgiveness that you have extended upon us, and help us, Lord, to truly be an instrument that will further your gospel to the ends of the earth. Guide us and bless us this morning, Father, as we worship you. As we pray in Jesus' name, amen. So the title of the message this morning is Moving from Identity Confusion to Clarity. Just last weekend, we were here at Grace Gospel to have a training on the world needs a father. And one of the things mentioned or clarified in the training is that for you to understand God's purpose, your identity as a Christian must be made clear. In fact, if you went to the training, one of the things that we were taught is that from age 6 to 12, if you have a child that is between age 6 to 12, you must understand that these are father impact years. And you must give them clarity as far as identity is concerned. Because after the father impact years, you will have the peer impact years. No wonder when you have a child that is within his teenage years, you will notice that this is where most of the struggles happen. And part of the struggle, or part of the reason why there is a struggle, is because the identity has not been made clear. So you expose them to the world. They get exposed to other people. Some are not Christians. In fact, in most cases, most of the friends that they will have during this phase are not Christians. And if the identity is not clear, it will also affect their purpose. So that's why this morning we want to have clarity as far as our identity as a believer is concerned. Now, a few questions. Number one, how consistent are you as far as your identity as a Christian is concerned? Do people in your home, in your office, in your neighborhood, in your school understand and know that you are indeed a Christian? Not only because you profess to be a Christian, but because it is evident in the way that you live. Secondly, if you understand your identity being a Christian, do you really align with God's purpose? You know, it's sad that a lot of people who call themselves Christian do not really align with the purposes of God. So part of the reason for that is because we don't have clarity as far as identity is concerned. So a few things that we need to understand before we proceed to the details of the passage. In Exodus chapter 34, verse 1, notice that in this particular chapter, the Lord actually told Moses to once again chisel out 2 stone tablets. If you remember a few chapters back, the Lord actually gave Moses the 10 Commandments. But what happened to the first tablet? Was it a Samsung or an iPad, by the way? What happened to that? Actually got destroyed by Moses himself because he threw it to the ground. Because when he went back after receiving the 10 Commandments, he noticed that the people of Israel were actually bowing down to a golden calf. And that's the reason why Moses threw it to the ground and eventually ended up destroying it. By the way, just a word of warning. Some people actually own this latest version of iPad, the iPad Pro. Have you seen it? It's a huge tablet. And there is this fake app. It's the Wayscale app. If you install it and actually stand on your iPad Pro, you will end up destroying it. So some of them have installed it, by the way. And if you step on your iPad, you'll end up destroying it. But going back again to the passage. So the Lord wanted to reiterate the 10 Commandments. And the reason for that is so that Israel will align with the very purpose of God. And the sad reality is this. According to Warren Wiersbe, the fact that God renewed the covenant is evidence that He forgave His people and gave them a new beginning. But you must understand that the Lord did not forgive them for forgiveness' sake. The Lord forgave them so that they can once again realign with the purposes of God. So that identity must be made clear so that they can realign with the purposes of God. You know, it saddens me that whenever we talk about the promised land, we usually think of prosperity, right? That the Lord wants us to be prosperous. And every time Christians use the term promised land, I'm going to my promised land, usually we think of prosperity, financial blessings, material possessions. But the Lord clarified in the earlier chapter that the reason why God wants to bring them to the promised land is so that we can fulfill His purposes for Israel. So Warren Wiersbe is correct in saying that the reason why God forgave them is so that they would have a new beginning and that they can realign with His purpose for them. And then another thing that I would like to mention from Warren Wiersbe is this, that the presence of the glory of God in the camp Israel was not a luxury, it was a necessity. So in other words, the people of Israel must be known as people who follow the Lord. They must be known as people who worship the Lord. And that must be made evident in the presence of the Gentile nations surrounding them. Now, going to the purpose of the whole book of Exodus. This is taken from Exodus 6:6-8. Allow me to read this. Therefore say to the people of Israel, I am the Lord. I will free you from your oppression and will rescue you from your slavery in Egypt. I will redeem you with a powerful arm and great acts of judgment. And I will claim you as my own people. I will be your God. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God who has freed you from your oppression in Egypt. I will bring you into the land I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I will give it to you as your very own possession. I am the Lord. Now, in the context of the book of Exodus, they were able to leave Egypt, going to the promised land. Now, you must understand that geographically, they were already outside the territories of Egypt. But the problem is, in their hearts and in their minds, they always cherished Egypt. You remember every time they suffer from oppression or starvation in the wilderness, what would they usually say? Egypt is better, right? They wanted to go back to Egypt. Now you have to understand that God is giving them this new identity. He removed them from the territories of Egypt, but the second task that God is doing in their lives is to remove Egypt from their hearts. You know, sometimes God removes us from our sinful society, from sinful friends, from a sinful lifestyle. But the question is that sinful lifestyle removed from your heart? So there must be clarity as far as identity is concerned. And part of that identity is submitting to God's mission. And basically it means that there is an act of abandonment. We have to discard our dreams, plans, agenda in order to adopt God's dream, plans, and agenda. So this is your life. But God's kingdom is only a small part of your life. And we should move from this first model to the second model wherein you see God's kingdom and your life is a part of God's plan. You see, in the first model, the one to your left, yes, you have God in your life, you worship God, you serve God, but the problem is God's kingdom and the concerns of the kingdom of God is only a small priority as far as your life is concerned. What the Bible is telling us that our life is all about God's kingdom and we should align with His plan and purposes for our lives. So the sad reality is, if you look at the two circles, and if I ask you this question, which of the two circles basically represent most of Christians' life? Which model? Is it the first one or the second one? Okay. Notice that a lot of them will have this one. Okay. Prosperity gospel, for example. A lot of them teach that you need God so that He can bless you in your plans and ambitions. It's not biblical. The biblical model is this. You were made for a purpose and your life should be all about God's kingdom. Now the reason why God was bringing them to the promised land is not just for them to enjoy the blessings of the promised land. The reason why God is bringing them to the promised land is so that they can be a good testimony to the people around them and that they too will believe in the Lord. So another thing about identity is this. It's about knowing who you are not. This is very important. I took this from The World Needs a Father. It says here, defining identity often requires us to define the things we do not adapt as part of our identity. So God wanted to make clear and to make sure that the Israelites did not compromise, because as long as they compromise, as they continue to compromise, their identity and their purpose would be unclear. So 4 things you would like to look at this morning. Number 1, the establishment of a new identity. So I would like to use this word consecration. When you say consecration, basically it means to be set apart or to be holy. We all know the meaning of being set apart. Okay, how many of you brush your teeth? I'm surprised. Okay. You should have a dental mission one time. And how many of you have your own toothbrush? I'm sure you all have, right? This was the struggle when we were in seminary. You know, when you are with people that you're not used to being with, and they come from different families, different regions from the Philippines. Sometimes when you look at your bath soap, okay, you wonder how come you do not take a bath that often, but your bath soap seems to be getting thinner and thinner every day. Okay? And then, of course, if you have a toothbrush, I'm sure that you will not allow your spouse to use it, or do you? How many of you allow that? You don't. Why? Because it is set apart. Okay? Right? It is set apart. It is exclusive for your own purpose. That's the idea of consecration, to be set apart, meaning that you belong only to the Lord. And the reason why identity is important, because God wants to remind Israel, I did not save you, I did not create you, I did not raise you up so that you will compromise. I raised you up because I want to set you apart for my own purpose, for my own plan, and for my own mission. That's why if you go to the New Testament, in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9 and 10, this is a very interesting passage, and it actually refers to all Christians. It says here, but you are not like that, for you are a chosen people. You are royal priests, a holy nation, God's very own possession. As a result, you can show others the goodness of God, for He called you out of darkness into His wonderful light. Once you had no identity as a people, now you are God's people. Once you received no mercy, now you have received God's mercy. I would like to highlight the last part of verse 9. As a result, you can show others the goodness of God. So when that identity is clear, we can align with the purpose of God. You know the reason why a lot of Christians, despite being known to be Christians, are not really effective Christians as far as their testimony is concerned? Because they are not consecrated. They are not consecrated. How can you give a powerful testimony if your life is not consecrated to the Lord? How can you share to others the good news of the gospel if people do not even know you to be a Christian? So we are given a new identity. The old has gone and the new has come. Consecrate yourself unto the Lord. That's the reason why the law was given, so that they would be consecrated unto the Lord. Secondly, what is the significance of this new identity? We want to talk about compliance, or basically obedience. You know, it's very interesting that when you talk about identity and compliance or obedience, it relates to three things that I would like to highlight this morning. Your identity has to do with Israel's mission. Identity also connects with God's provision. And we would like to talk about identity and the next generation. How important is this? Let's look at the first one. Identity and the mission of Israel. Can you read this passage with me? Genesis 12, 1-3. Read. The Lord had said to Abraham, leave your native country, your relatives and your father's family, and go to the land that I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you and make you famous, and you will be a blessing to others. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who treat you with contempt. All the families on earth will be blessed through you. We call this the Abrahamic covenant. When God called up Abraham, this one man was given a promise by God that eventually you will become a nation. But it is important to keep in mind that the purpose of this Abrahamic covenant is not only to bless Abraham. According to the passage, I will make you great. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you and make you famous, and you will be a blessing to others. So the reason why they will receive all these blessings was so that they in turn can be a blessing to others. You know, the sad thing about many Christians is that we want blessings, and sometimes we don't even know why we want blessings. You know, we have trained ourselves to ask for more. I remember this passage from the book of Proverbs. I think it's chapter 30 or 31 where it says, Lord, two things I ask of you. First, help me not to tell a lie. The second part of the request is this: give me just enough to meet my daily needs. It is a courageous prayer, asking God for enough. When was the last time that you asked God for enough? Usually when we pray, what do we ask for? We ask for more. And that particular passage tells us, give me just enough. You know why? Because according to him, if I don't have enough, I may end up stealing and cause you shame. And if I have more than enough, I might forget you and live a life independent of your purpose. So you see, many times we think of God's blessings. But do you ever think that the reason why God blesses you is so that you in turn can contribute to the furtherance of His kingdom? God made it clear to Abraham, I will bless you. From one man, there will be a nation. I will make you great. I will make you famous. But it does not stop in those particular verses. It continues and it says, I will bless those who bless you. I will curse those who treat you with contempt. You will be a blessing to others. So in other words, all the blessings that you will receive is for a greater purpose, and that is for the furtherance of the kingdom. So identity is important for Israel so that they would contribute to their mission as a people called by God. And I believe today it is the same. Your identity as a Christian should be made clear, and you must align your identity with God's mission for you. Secondly, we want to talk about provisions. Identity and God's provision. We will be using the same passage. Now, if your identity is clear, ask yourself the question, why has God provided all these things? Why did God allow me to have all these blessings? The reason for that, again, is so that you can align with His purpose and so that He can use whatever provisions that He has given you for the furtherance of His plan and purpose. And another thing, thirdly, identity in the next generation. You know, it's very interesting because again and again, the Bible tells us, you must help the next generation, make sure that they have a clear understanding of their relationship with God. According to this verse, be careful to obey all my commands so that all will go well with you and your children after you, because you will be doing what is good and pleasing to the Lord your God. After the book of Joshua follows the book of Judges. You know, in the book of Joshua, they were about to conquer the land. In fact, in the latter part of the book of Joshua, they were already inside the promised land. But what is interesting is the book of Judges. Okay? In the book of Judges, a phrase keeps repeating itself, and that phrase is this: again, the Israelites did what is displeasing in the eyes of God. They sinned against the Lord. And that is the reason why the Lord handed them over to their enemies. Now, I was doing a comparative study of Israel's situation in the wilderness and in the promised land according to the book of Judges. You know what's interesting? In the wilderness, it was really barren. Some of you were probably able to go to Egypt. You're able to see the barrenness of Egypt. I was given an opportunity to go there once. I saw Egypt from the side of Israel going down to Cairo. You know, we traveled for more than 12 hours. I slept most of the time in the bus, but every time I wake up, I see barrenness. Nothing to eat, okay? Nothing to drink. If you look at it, no trees, just rocks and desert, all the way up to Cairo. And you can imagine, I was asking myself, if I'm one of those Israelites that were traveling with Moses, most likely, I would be one of those leading the campaign to overthrow Moses and go back to Egypt. Can you imagine walking in the barrenness of the fields or the deserts of Egypt. Nothing to eat. But because they were obedient to God, in the wilderness, God provided what they needed. Because they were obedient. They had manna every day. They had too much manna. In the end, they hated manna. Sawa na. Okay? Can you imagine? Probably if they were Filipinos, they had come up with different ways to cook manna. Adobong manna, pinaupong manna, manna siguro. All different kinds of manna. But in the end, they got so used up to too much manna and they hated it. But God provided other food for them to eat and also water. They had the pillar of fire in the night and then they have the cloud by day. But what is interesting is this. It was a barren place, but they were well provided for. And the reason for that is because they were obedient to the Lord. But notice, when they were in the promised land, a land flowing with milk and honey, because they were disobedient to the Lord, they were not able to enjoy the blessings of the promised land. Read the book of Judges. Again and again, the Bible will tell you, they did what is evil in the Lord's sight, so the Lord handed them over to their enemies. You're surrounded by so much blessing, but you cannot enjoy it because you are disobedient. So, God wanted to protect the next generation. That's why He keeps on telling all the Israelites, obey all my commandments, so that all will go well with you and your children after you. That identity as a people chosen by God should be made clear not only to this generation, but also to the next generation. Thirdly, what are the threats to this new identity? And one word comes to mind, compromise. Compromise basically means you accept standards that are lower than what is desirable. I would usually liken the word compromise to what I experience when I go to Divisoria. Tumatawag tayo, right? You have a particular price, you try to lower the price where everybody will be happy. The seller is happy and you become happy as a consumer. Once I went with my mother and she taught me how to do the tawag sa Divisoria. She said you should always ask for 50% discount. Nakakahiya naman, 50% agad. Okay, so we went. Sinampulan ako. Sabi niya, how much is this? 100. 50 pesos na lang. I ended up walking away. So she asked me why. Ano ko, nakakahiya. Baka akalain nanay ko kayo. But in fact, she is. Pero the point is this, di ba? You try to lower the standard so that everybody will be happy. So it's similar to compromise. Many times we think by lowering God's standard, we will be happy and God will be happy. But understand this, compromise never makes God happy. You're the only one happy with compromise. God will never be happy with compromise. That's why you have to understand that this is a threat to that new identity. God told you to be His very own people to accomplish His purpose, and there are basically two kinds of compromise, or two threats to that compromise. Number one is an internal threat, which is an idolatrous heart. And the second one is the influence of the nations around them. Let's look at the first one. In Exodus 34, verse 15, it says, "You must not make a treaty of any kind with the people living in the land. They lust after their gods, offering sacrifices to them." What's next? "They will invite you to join them in their sacrificial meals, and you will go with them." It's very interesting how subtle compromise happens. Why in the world would they make a treaty with these people? The reason for that is because many of them are afraid of these countries, afraid of these nations, because they are powerful. So the treaty would allow them to move within the lands of these people without being harmed. So it's very tempting. Okay? They are basically willing volunteers, willing victims to these people. That's why when they invited them, they willingly came and compromised their faith. Why? Because of an idolatrous heart. You see, if you have an idolatrous heart, you will always find ways to disobey the Lord. I remember the words of Richard Blackaby. This is what he said: "Your struggle in obeying God comes from your struggle in loving God." It's really all about the heart. The reason why we disobey God so much is because we have an idolatrous heart. A theologian once said, God is most pleased with us when we are most satisfied with Him. God is most glorified in us when we are most satisfied in Him. You know one evidence of not being satisfied with God? Idolatry. Idolatry. It indicates that you are not really satisfied with God. You are not satisfied with His protection. You are not satisfied with His provision. And you end up compromising your faith. And in the end, not fulfilling His purpose. Verse 16. Then you will accept their daughters who will sacrifice to other gods as wives for your sons. And they will seduce your sons to commit adultery against me by worshiping other gods. Two of the things that God really hated in the Old Testament. Idolatry. The second one is intermarriage. And notice how closely they are linked together. They will invite you. And then eventually, then you will accept their daughters as part of the treaty, who will sacrifice to other gods as wives for your sons. And they will seduce your sons to commit adultery against me by worshiping other gods. Idolatry, intermarriage are both issues of identity. The other is an external threat, the influence of other nations. Look at verse 12. Going back to verse 12. Be very careful never to make a treaty with the people who live in the land where you are going. If you do, you will follow their evil ways and be trapped. The influence of the other nations. That's why identity must be made clear. You know, in our study on fatherhood, as under the topic of discipline, it's very interesting that during the teenage years, we correct our children so much. But according to the study, the reason why we correct them so much, basically it's not really them that we're trying to correct, but our errors in their younger years. We try to correct the negligence that we did in their younger years. We never clarify their identity. We never clarify their life's purpose, and we end up correcting them during the teenage years. And when we compromise, brothers and sisters, it indicates that our hearts are not fully submitted to the Lord. We'll go to the fourth one. How do we protect that new identity? It's through a covenant. A covenant basically is a written agreement or promise, usually under seal, between two or more parties, especially for the performance of some action. So in other words, it's an agreement, it's a contract. You agree to do this, and the other party agrees to do this. That's why when you read the Bible, it's really all about the covenant of the Lord. He says, I will do this. If you obey, I will bless you. If you disobey, I will discipline you. Or in some passages, it says, I will curse you. Now that covenant is important. We have to protect it. We have to protect the new identity by obeying the terms of the covenant. But we must understand that the covenant should not only be obeyed for the sake of obedience, we should obey it because we love the Lord. Look at Exodus 34 verse 10. It says, the Lord replied, I am making a covenant with you in the presence of your people. I will perform miracles that have never been performed anywhere in all the earth or in any nation. And all the people around you will see the power of the Lord, the awesome power I will display for you. So what God is saying, if you obey me, I will bless you, and the blessings that I will pour upon you will be a testimony to the people around you, so that they in turn will also come to know the Lord. Imagine a person, Abraham, turned into a nation, the nation of Israel, and when they are blessed by the Lord, when they are made famous by the Lord, when they are made powerful by the Lord, this will be a testimony to the rest of the people of the land that God is indeed God. And that they too would come to know the Lord. So the challenge for us this morning, how do we protect this covenant? I would like to share two passages, one from the Old Testament, the other one from the New Testament. How do we protect this covenant? How do you protect your identity? Since identity is so connected with purpose, how do we protect this identity? And we said it's really all about obeying the terms of the covenant. How do we do this? Deuteronomy 6:4 to 9. Listen, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. And you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. And you must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands that I am giving you today. Repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them when you are at home and when you are on the road, when you are going to bed and when you are getting up. Tie them on your hands and wear them on your forehead as reminders. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. In other words, the commandments of the Lord should be a part of our daily conversation with our children, with our families. How many of us do that? We talk about our family, we talk about the Lord with our families. You know what the sad reality is? Most of you are very committed to the Lord. This generation may be succeeded by people who are not really as committed as you are. You know why? Because if we fail to do this, we sacrifice the next generation. So that's why the Lord is telling Israel, even before you enter the promised land, you must make sure that the next generation will not only inherit the blessings, the material prosperity of the land, but they will inherit your faith in God as well. That it will be made clear to them that the purpose of all the blessings is so that they can obey the Lord and that they will fulfill His plans. Commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands. Repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them when you are at home, when you are on the road, when you are going to bed, when you are getting up. It's the first thing they see when they leave the house. That's why you tie it to the doorposts and the gates. It's also the first thing. It's the last thing they see when they leave the house. It's also the first thing that they see when they return home. Knowing that the identity will be compromised if we do this. And then lastly, from the New Testament, Jesus was asked this question, which is the greatest commandment? And the Lord said, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. The second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. The terms of the law simplified. It's not really obeying for the sake of obedience. It's obeying because we love the Lord. That's why when we fail to give these commandments to the next generation, it indicates a disobedient heart. Because if you love the Lord, you will tell your children about the Lord. You know, it's very natural for us. For example, if you eat this delicious food or donut that you found in a certain coffee shop, what do? Do you keep it a secret? No. May take out, di ba? Pag hindi ka nag-take out, lagot ka. Okay? You bring it home. You make sure that your family would also taste it. You make sure that whatever good experience that you have, they will also experience. So the challenge for us is this. Pass on to your children what is most important to you. Your faith. So that they too will continue serving the Lord and will fulfill God's plan for their lives. Our failures will have a consequence to the next generation. It will also have a consequence as far as God's mission, overall mission is concerned. So, our identity should be made clear. You are a child of God. Live according to your destiny as a child of God. Let us pray. Father, we ask for forgiveness for the many times, Lord, that we have become inconsistent with our new identity. When we live lives that are compromised, Lord, when we compromise our values, compromise our faith through our behaviors, Lord, we ask for forgiveness. Always remind us that every time we do this, we put at stake your plan, Lord. You have always given us opportunities to share your word. But Lord, if we do not live consistent with our new identity, we will fail to do this. So it is our prayer, Father, that this morning we will move from identity confusion to clarity. The clearer our identity is, the more we can fulfill your purpose for our lives and our mission as well. So we ask this, Lord, in the name of Jesus. Amen.